I'm Robert Cardoza, and you're watching On the Street. This is the intersection of business and politics. This is where we just analyze everything that's going on and give you the honest-to-God truth, whether you like it or not. Don't care if you're a Republican, Democrat, Independent, Purple People Leader. We're going to just tell you the way it is. Sometimes it's hard to swallow. Sometimes it's good news for you, but it's going to always be the truth. Now, coming up next, we're going to be talking about the good news and the bad news. We're going to be talking about the internet, so you don't want to miss it. But right now, one of my favorite people is Gil Savage. Now, Gil Savage is the regional director of the American Association of Community Theaters. And you're going to say, Bob, why have you got community theaters on? And I'll tell you why. It's because there's 7,000 of them across the country. Gil, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
So we're talking about 7,000 theaters, and you're a regional director. You cover, let's see, California, Arizona, Nevada, and Hawaii, right?
Very good.
So basically, that's a big area to cover. How many theaters in just that area, do you know?
Well, we figure there's about a third of that 7,000 in that area.
Yeah.
California has a huge amount of theaters here.
Yeah, and which is a good thing.
Yes.
And people are saying, gee, what are you so hot about in regional theaters? And basically, when we're talking about it, about what, 86 million people or somewhere like that, that are attending community theaters?
That's correct. That's correct. You know, very few people are aware of these kinds of numbers. They're usually astonished to hear that there's 7,000. And in fact, community theater is a tradition that goes back more than 100 years in many parts of the country, very well developed. Those theaters, those 7,000 theaters usually do 4 or 5 shows per season. And when you tally up all the people who go to see those shows, we're talking 86 million people.
A big
in this
deal,
country.
a big
Yes.
deal. And about 46,000 volunteers that put those shows on nationally,
That's
right?
correct. That's part of the tradition is that, you know, most of the people who are running community theater engaged at any level, from the people who do the tickets to the people who seat you to the people on the stage and the people who put the whole show together, those people are almost always volunteers.
So let's talk about two parts of this. You have the volunteers that are the actual production company, and then you also sell advertising, which is really good for business, which is why you're on this show.
See.
Because we're always trying to see what's good for business. And the truth is, when you have 86 million people watching, that's good for business. There's got to be a way, right?
Exactly.
Every performance has a performance schedule or a playbill, and in there is where your advertising is.
That's correct.
And most of those playbills, I know that when I go to the theater, I take them home with me.
Well, that actually, you know, there's been a lot of studies about that. It's one of the few things that people get at events that they do take home. The majority of people actually take those home and read them at home. So it's a remarkable source for getting your message, your imprint, and the fact that you support what's going on there, that message to a lot of people.
Let me ask you, is community theater subsidized by the government anyway, local or state or federal?
Well, usually if there's some subsidy, it's at the city level. It's at the very, very local level. And yes, many theaters do get some form of help from cities, but it's usually in the form of a building that the city owns, that they have, it's not being used.
They provide it.
That's right, for a buck.
Which is a big deal.
Yes, it's a wonderful thing. It's what makes it possible. But they get a tremendous amount of returns for that, of course.
Now, when you're talking about a season, my season here on the street is 13 weeks. Your season, I'm guessing, is 12 months.
Well, there's usually a 2-month hiatus during the summer, in which case for a regular theater, and then usually there's summer theaters that fill in that particular time frame too.
So when you're doing a production, let's just say Pirates of Penzance or whatever it might be, right?
Yeah.
While you're doing that production, do you actually have ongoing, what do you want to call it, rehearsals for the next show going on?
Sure. You know, from the business standpoint, and particularly for an audience that's a business-oriented audience, community theater, running a theater is a complex business operation at its heart. You may be producing entertainment, but it's not just the process that it takes to get that together and make it happen. It's like when you think about it, every one of those shows has usually a new cast, often new creative people working on it. So that's changing with each show. So in the course of a season, if you do 10 shows, you're talking about a lot of people. It has to run on time. It's running against a deadline, a very firm deadline, and everything has to be done. and it has to be done well if you want to stay in business.
And there's a lot of practice that gets into this.
Yes.
That's why the rehearsals.
That's correct.
Obviously.
That's correct. So if you have a bunch of shows going on in the course of a season, you're almost always rehearsing one while another one is also performing.
Let me ask you a question. Let's talk about the advertising for businesses, because I think that's really important to the people that are watching the show here. It doesn't make any difference what size business, because the advertising is very affordable. But no matter what size business you have, big or small, and I'm guessing bigger businesses really support the local communities. What kind of costs are involved in the advertising? Because when you talk about these kinds of numbers, obviously those numbers go for the entire association.
Sure. Of course, it varies completely, and sometimes it varies on the size of the house and how many people are there and that sort of thing. But it's not uncommon to be able to get a quarter page in a show program for the run of the season for a couple of $1,000s.
Which is, talk about a return on investment when you talk about, can we just talk about San Diego for just a minute?
Sure.
And over the course of a season, how many theater goers they're probably buying season tickets anyway, but how many theater goers would be exposed to this advertising during the season?
Well,
knowing that you've got extra ones that didn't come to the last show,
sure,
and some repeats, but they're still seeing. It's a matter of impressions, right?
Well, yeah, and it is also, and part of the factoring here is how many are season ticket holders that come back and see every show, and how many of them are not, and they're just there for one or two shows. In San Diego theater, we're blessed in community theater with having a tremendously strong season subscriber basis, which means that all those season subscribers are going to see those show programs. They're going to see that message over and over and over again. Right. And those are the same people who are typically affluent. They're typically people who are connected in the area, and they're people who are, because they're in that program, are the businesses in that program. They're given a certain amount of automatic vetting, if you will. There's a sense of relationship for the people that would support that theater, because most everybody who's a season ticket holder loves their theater and they support them. Well,
and that's the way it should be. Now, I want to remind everybody that we're talking to Gil Savage. He's the Regional Director for the American Association of Community Theaters. When we come back, we're going to talk about even more exciting things about community theater and how you can support them. But right now, I want to remind everybody that you're watching On the Street. This is the intersection of business and politics. Me? I'm Robert Cardoza.